Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My guest today is Mark Bloom. He joins us from the UK, and I'm going to read a little bit about about him. And he's from Liverpool, England, and he published his debut book of a short series late last year that's called Iron Petal, a collection of tales, new and old. His fictional works are often inspired by myth, folklore, and lucid dreams. And he is currently working on his second book, which is about a fantasy fiction novel inspired by his Norse and Celtic heritage. And I hope you, from our conversation, I hope you enjoy what you hear about his book. And the Amazon links for both the US and the UK are in the show notes down below. So, Mark, thank you so much for joining me. We've become acquainted for several years now through a mutual friend, and she thought she would be able to watch live today. So I'll have to look for her name coming up. But I've really enjoyed visiting with you and emailing back and forth. And when I first started having my, I called them visions, but I think they were, some were visions and some were lucid dreaming, like what you're talking about. And so it was helpful because that was very new to me at the time. And when I first started doing that, and I really enjoyed our conversations about that and about the Welsh backgrounds that we both have.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
And so that's been fun. And so I was wondering, well, first, could you, just for anyone that doesn't know or isn't, wants to know a more finer, not definition, so to speak, but a working definition of what is lucid dreaming? How would you describe that? Are you awake? Are you
I guess in
awake
the
or
most
you're
basic
asleep?
terms.
Okay, go ahead.
For me personally, I'm asleep. And then when I was younger, it was a matter of if I was in a dream, usually when I was a child, I'd be in a nightmare. And then I would realize this is a dream. So lucid is when you're aware that you're dreaming. So then usually at that point, people wake up because of either the excitement or the fright, the fear, some kind of like emotional outburst will wake you up. But when I was a child, for a little while, I wouldn't wake up. So I'd be stuck in a nightmare, and then I taught myself to wake myself back up. So I don't know exactly how I'd describe that, but it's more like I intend to wake back up because I know I'm asleep, I'm in a dream. So then in the dream, I'll close my eyes and sit and tell myself that I'm going to wake back up, and then I do. And that was when I was a child. And then as I got older and dreams in general became more and more vivid, so then I'd start to realize while I'm in a dream that I was dreaming. Mm-hmm. So then it becomes more of like a bit like when you're awake, but more fluid. It's kind of everything around you is moving at its own pace, and you're kind of keeping up with it in that sense. So the dream can sometimes still play out the way that it was going to play out, I suppose, but you've got a bit more agency over what you're doing within that environment. So it's a little bit like being awake.
Right. Well, yeah. I know I've had that too. I didn't know what to call them, really. At one time when I had first started, I remember one dream in particular. I knew I was awake, but I wasn't fully awake, but I knew I wasn't totally asleep. And this dream had started, and I did time travel in the dreams. I could see myself going to a certain place, that was several hours away, or a day away, or whatever. I was moving through time in my head. Does that happen to you sometimes too?
Yeah, and I've noticed that as I'm growing up, getting older, and I've visited different places, then that becomes almost a part of like your mind's catalog that you can recall in a way. So like if you know where like when I was younger and I was at school, we visited Malaga in the south of Spain. And then after that, I could have dreams easily enough, or even lucid dreams, where I'm in a sort of Mediterranean Spanish setting that looks like Malaga. It's almost like you've got new material to work with, I suppose. So it's almost like the dream world is there, but it dresses up in different like an overlay, like at the front of it. Like you can almost hallucinate what's there and get a bit more detail out of it, because your mind is more used to it has more details to fill in the gaps with. So it gets a little bit
Right.
easier over time.
Yeah. And so if you choose to, or can you make that happen? Can you like choose what dream you want to kind of redream or re-enter again?
Usually when that happens, if I wake up and then go back into a dream, it kind of happens automatically and continues roughly where it was. That's but I can sometimes, it depends how well you hold your attention, or when you're going to sleep, intent, that kind of thing. You can sometimes pre-program a dream, I guess might be the right way of describing it. It's like planting a seed.
Right, right. Yeah, that would be interesting in itself to try. That interests me. I'm thinking, maybe I'll try that for like a week in a row or something. See if I can, several days in a
Yeah,
row, try to hold that intention before I go to bed and see what happens.
usually it's like I said, like planting a seed, where a couple nights ago when I was going to sleep, I was thinking about there's this it's silly, it sounds silly, but it's in Harry Potter, the movies. There's a scene with Ron Weasley where there's a cabinet, and the cabinet shows you your worst fears or whatever, and his fear is spiders. So a giant spider comes out the cabinet, and they're being taught how to cast a certain spell, which I think is called Ridiculum or something, or Ridiculous, something like that. It sounds like ridiculous. And the spell basically turns whatever you're looking at, it makes it comical. It's like telling a joke, that kind of idea, but it's visual. So
Okay.
the spider suddenly has roller skates on it, so its legs go all over the place. And it's like kind of, I was thinking about how that's a funny, almost like a philosophical approach to like painful memories, or that kind of idea. The subconscious, you can kind of, the cool thing about the memory is you can return to things that have happened, but we tend to reinforce the pain,
Yeah.
because we go over the memory again and again and think, woe is me, I'm a victim kind of mentality. But if you take that concept from Harry Potter and like you can overlay the pain with this, like the roller skates on the spider, whatever your
Yeah.
spider is, put roller skates on it kind of thing. And then I thought it's a really cool, even though it's just pop culture, it's a funny, Harry Potter scene. I thought the concept behind it is quite interesting psychologically. And so when I went to sleep, I was thinking about that, because I hyper focus on things, and then I was hyper focusing on it while I was trying to fall asleep. So then when I did go to sleep, I had a dream where a cousin who I've not seen in years, he's got quite a dry sense of humor, and he was talking to me in a dream, and I couldn't quite make out what he said. And he said something to me about he said, oh, it was really clear. He said self isolating deep dive into your wretched self. And I thought, why is he saying that to me? And he seemed quite serious. And then I asked him to explain, and he smiled, and he said, MMO hell dive, or MMO hell drop, or something, which was like the MMO is a video game term. It's like
Oh,
it's like multiple. I'm trying to think what the acronym means now. It's like multiple. It's like an multiple online type thing. So it's like a multimedia online, where everybody connects online. So it's like a bit like life. We're all here connected online in the
okay.
world. And then hell drop is kind of like it's a dark but comical way of describing psychology, shadow work, like the individuation, Carl Jung, that kind of idea, like deep diving into the subconscious to try and overlay old memories that are painful and glean what kind of wisdom you can from them. And I thought, when I woke up and I recalled that conversation with my cousin and those two things he said to me in the dream, I realized that was basically the Ron Weasley with the spider putting rollerblades on it, because he'd basically, his first comment said something about my wretched self, which sounds like an insult. And then immediately after, he followed it up with this kind of comical term that I had never heard before, but intuitively I understood what he meant. And it was funny. And so when I woke up, instead of being like hurt or instead I felt more like it was kind of funny. I just thought there was a bit of humor to it, and I thought, oh, that's weird, because I fell asleep thinking about that exact concept. It's like seeding the dream.
Yeah, how it came out. So, well, that leads to so many questions. But yeah, I've never heard that, from say a teacher or a thought leader type of thing to make it into something funny. But it really makes kind of sense, because if there's, like you just said, there's so many things of our own junk, right, from our own past, and we always go over and over and over the negative things of it, and to I'm gonna do that too. You're full of good ideas, Mark. Going to do that too to one of my things in the past that I rehash, and try to put a funny spin on it, and yeah, I like that idea. I mean, there's only so much you can learn from something, right? And then it's time to move on.
Oh,
and the turning it funny should help it move on. Yeah, very good. But I was wondering then, so like you just said, you kind of seeded your own dream when you started. Of what goes on in the lucid dreamings, do you feel you're in control of that to any way, or you try to be an outsider in them, or what's your take on that?
It shifts a little, because there's for me, most of the time I'm in the dream and it's like first person perspective, and it's like I have agency over myself, but what's happening around me is happening. Maybe I'll be able to alter a few things if I focus on something and decide I want that to change. I can kind of, it's hard to describe it because you can't really do this in the real world. But maybe you can lighten something up, you can cast a light, or that kind of, you can alter the environment a little. So it comes down to, for me personally, I'll have agency over what I can do, but the environment is the dream is going to keep doing what it's doing. And I just need to learn how to navigate it. It's a bit like being in the sea or in water, and there's a current or something. You can learn how to navigate a little bit. And then the other perspective is something I've noticed, which is drawing from pop culture again, a little bit like the Harry Potter thing, is I've noticed with when you introduce new concepts to your mind when you're awake, you can then recycle them in dreaming and use them in dreaming. So there's with video games, I'm a millennial. I've grown up on video games, and you get introduced different concepts that you can't experience in real life, because in a video game, it's just an avatar character that can't get hurt. It's a digital thing, so you don't need to worry. If you die in a video game, you're okay. He'll just respawn and be at a checkpoint and try again, kind of thing. So it's a really good training ground for different concepts and ideas that when you get comfortable with them, they kind of become a part of your mind in a way. Like you can a simple one in a video game is third person perspective. So we see in first person in real life, but if you're playing a video game, sometimes you can click a button and the camera will zoom out from first person perspective to third person, so you can see your character. And then I noticed in dreaming, if I'm lucid dreaming, I can do that just by thinking about it or intending to do it. It's like the perspective changes, so I go from being in first person to seeing myself from usually up back here, like a camera perspective, like in a movie. But I still have control over me, and that's very. It took a little while for me to realize. I think this is probably because the idea was introduced to me by video games, and I've just gotten so used to it with playing video games from a young age that this is just an ordinary concept to me of being able to switch from first person to third person. So then in a dream, I can just kind of do that. And it was only recently I started thinking about how there are so many things you can do in a video game that are perfectly safe because, well, it's a video game, so you can't harm yourself. So it's almost like practice, but for dreaming, if you think of it that way, if you have that intent to take it into dreaming, then technically you can, like flying in a video game, you can fly, and then if you get comfortable with the video game and seeing that, you start to do it subconsciously, and when you're playing the video game, you don't think about it because you know you're safe, and then you kind of take that with you into dreaming at night, or I do. So I'm like, oh, this is interesting, because I know that like the outside world of popular rhetoric is people don't like video games. They think, oh, it's a waste of time, it's laziness, it's silly pop culture, it's social engineering. And I started to see all that as like a glass half full approach to something that they always miss out the part where you have agency. We're always the variable, we're the recurrent factor in anything we interact with. So if you disown your own agency in interacting with these things like technology, like video games, then it's always going to be glass half empty. But I started thinking of it in like a glass half full kind of way, where I'm like, actually, there is something you can glean from doing this. So it's not like, not to suggest that people should just like play video games all day every day,
Right.
but there is something there as opposed to the usual commentary, which is that they're just a waste of time. There's actually kind of interesting neurological studies on video games that show they create neural connections for pattern recognition and strategizing and attention to detail, because it's all embedded within the mechanics of the game, and you don't realize you're doing it because you're just playing a game. But your brain's making all these connections, and then you can use it in real life. And it's strange, because I have godchildren who've grown up on video games more than I have, and they're really smart. And there's some things where I'm like, I'll say to them, how do you know that? And they're like, oh, it was on Fortnite, which is a video game. And I'm like, what? How? It's like, I don't know. I think people write things off too easily.
Yeah. Well, especially the older generation, right? Like, I didn't grow up on video games, but my boys did. My boys are just a year to 2, 3, 4 years older than you, right? And so they grew up on, oh gosh, I couldn't even remember their names. Anyway, don't need to go into that. But yeah, I was often just to write it off until Guitar Hero came out.
Oh yeah,
I kind of like that one.
Yeah.
It wasn't really
learning guitar because of that.
It wasn't a game, but I mean, well, kind of, but it wasn't like the action games, of a video game. But so I was wondering, let's see. Of your book, I just wanted to tell people, I really enjoyed Mark's book. I finished it a week or two ago, and I really enjoyed the stories in it. And my favorite story was the last one. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Because it was about a mother basically, and
Yeah.
because I'm a mother, I guess, you know, it pulled at heartstrings. It was just a very um, beautiful turnaround
Oh,
play in that
yeah.
how all the aspects of the story turned around, and that was really enjoyable to me. And so, which is your favorite?
The same story you just said, Remnant, A
Oh,
Mother's Love.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually, that story almost never made the book because of it. I like it, and I'd always liked it since I wrote it, but it really needed editing, and I kept editing it over and over because each time I read it, I was like, it's not quite there. And then in the end, I was thinking, I really want it in the book, and I want it at the end. But if I put it at the end, it needed to read cleaner. And
Mhm,
eventually, there was an edit that I used to. I'm on Substack. I've not published anything on Substack for a while, but
mhm.
at the time, I published that story to Substack because I thought if I put it available to the public for free and people read it, or if I think people are reading it, then that'll
Mhm.
prompt me to edit it better. I was
Okay.
basically bullying myself into
Right.
editing the story better, and
That's a
so I
good
did,
idea.
and
Yeah.
it worked. And I after having published it there for free, I edited it, got it into shape, and then realized, okay, I can put it in the book now. And that one actually is one of the stories that's based on a very vivid dream that I had. So like the main, um, you'll know when I mean in the story when they reach the top of the hill and they see the
Mhm,
willow tree with the lake
mhm.
and the mansion at the other end of the lake. That's where my dream began. So I was in
Okay.
first person perspective in the role of Lou, Alua here. I named him after I used the Irish language to sort of create his name
Right.
because I
Okay.
needed a character to stand in my place, so it
Sure,
wasn't too
sure.
self-serving. And then the other character, Amora, I just named her Amora because it's kind of like a reference to love, like the title, A
Yes.
Mother's Love,
Yeah.
that kind of idea. And she was like a character in the dream, and so the story up until when they're going to be leaving from the basement underneath the house, the cellar,
Okay.
when
Mhm.
they're going back up, that's where the dream ended. So I
Oh.
basically wrote the whole dream out as it was, and
Uh-huh.
then the beginning and the end of the story are just bookends that I invented. I just imagined and put them there so that I could weave a story throughout,
Yeah.
like the what you're referencing. I won't give the ending away in case anyone watching wants to read it,
Right.
but
Yeah. Don't give too much. Yeah.
the story that threads through the whole thing I created, but the activity, the
Mhm.
I guess the progression of the scenes within the story and that middle part that I just described as that's just a dream that I had at one point, and it was so vivid. I thought I'm gonna have to note it all down and then try and put that
Mhm.
into like a fantasy fiction story because it'd be cool.
And it is a lovely story. Well, thank you. That was great to hear how you wrote um, that story. What about like the one called Prometheus? To me, it was almost like a say a Orwell 1984 type
Yeah.
thing, right?
Um, so that one is it's my retelling of the the ancient Greek myth Prometheus. So, but I brought it into a sci-fi cyberpunk type setting because at the time or at the minute I'm very slowly writing a novel it's like a sci-fi cyberpunk type novel. So I decided at the time I thought, what if I practice by rewriting an ancient Greek myth but bringing it into this sort of cyberpunk universe theme,
Mhm.
give it that kind of aesthetic and see if that works. And at the time I'd published that to Substack as well. Actually it didn't take that long to write because I was the story's already written. It's an ancient story from ancient Greece. So, and I have the book. There's a book on my shelf which is I can't remember who wrote it. It's just on the shelf there, but I was given an old leather bound antiquarian book of Greek tragedy, and in there one of the stories is Prometheus, And I liked the way that author had written it out very concisely, and even gave it an epilogue with Hercules or Heracles.
Mm-hmm.
So then I thought I can use that book as the foundation of like the order of events and just follow it along, but write it in my own retelling, but dressing it up in this sort of sci-fi cyberpunk type futuristic dystopian world kind of situation. But I stuck fairly strictly to the original Prometheus story and just took a few creative liberties to add to it instead of changing what's already there. And then it worked out nicely. So I thought it takes up a lot of pages in the book. So fair enough.
No, it was good too. Referring back to dreams, that machine that he was on that punished him was almost like a dream state, and it seemed to be. I mean, of course, he was very much aware, but he was seeing things. So it was almost a lucid dreaming at the time that the machine made happen in his brain. Is that?
Yeah, it's like I guess like a dream simulator in a way. For the people listening, the part of Prometheus story is he steals light from Mount Olympus. He steals fire, a torch. You'll often see in pop culture torch bearer or light bearer. This is where the word Lucifer comes from. It's a Greek word. It just means light. Ferrier, the one who ferries light. So Prometheus is one of the early archetypes of that idea of someone who steals light from Mount Olympus or the heavens and brings it down to humanity. And then in the Greek story, Zeus punishes Prometheus by putting him on a rock. Like, I think it's iron. I think he binds him with iron to a rock. And then an eagle comes and pecks at Prometheus's liver every day. Like, and then overnight, Prometheus regenerates. In the original Greek, the liver regenerates, which is poetic because the human liver does regenerate itself. So then in my story, I was trying to think about how do I put that into a cyberpunk futuristic kind of way. And I thought, well, instead of literally pinning him to a rock, you could put him in a machine with a crown, an iron crown. And that could be hooked up to some kind of technology that causes him to hallucinate a different reality where he's pinned to the side of a mountain and an eagle comes and pecks at his liver. So I was able to find a workaround. These are the creative liberties I sort of took to kind of modernize this ancient story. And but you're right. It is kind of dreamlike. It is a bit,
very clever. Oh, very clever, Mark. Yeah. Most of the stories, I'm trying to think, except for the Prometheus, but from what I remember just off the top of my head, most of the others dealt with the afterlife, right? Or ancestors in some way.
Yeah,
right?
like psychopomp kind of work. Yeah.
Yeah. Did do a lot of your dreams then deal with the afterlife, or have you just written things in, as the book?
It's a little of both. It's kind of like I use the word psychopomp then, which is like another word from Greek tradition, which is, Charon, the ferryman on the river Styx, ferries souls from one side to the other. So he's basically the Grim Reaper or death. Santa Muerte I used in there's a trilogy inside the book that I refer to as the Fuchsia trilogy. And I put La Santa Muerte in there because that's like a Mexican folk tradition that's growing and growing and becoming like a vast religious cultural movement all over the world, really. But so this Santa Muerte, it just means holy death. Santa is saint, Muerte is death, so the saint of death. It's like she's like a psychopomp, and so I'm very interested in that because this is where it kind of connects to my dreams and lucid dreams in some ways. There's like unusual sort of between life and death situations, so it's not necessarily afterlife. It's more like that between part where, you know, when I'm trying to think of maybe even a pop culture reference that shows, that illustrates that kind of idea of someone guiding you from life to the afterlife. It's that kind of archetype. I was sort of unintentionally exploring that theme throughout the book. It just kind of came up because of my experiences while dreaming just happened to be a little bit like that. A bit like you mentioned the last story, Remnant of Mother's Love. The last story in the book, that's kind of similar in a way with I won't give too much away, but the situation between the mother and the child and crossing over and helping things move along, helping spirits move on, that kind of idea is a recurring theme in dreaming that initially I wasn't picking up on. When I'd wake up, I'd think, man, that was a weird dream. And then as the pattern started to recur and I started to write these things down and turn them into fiction, I was starting to see the underlying archetype of this psychopomp kind of work. And the Fuchsia series, the trilogy, and there's 3 short stories in the book that involve a character called Fuchsia, so I just call it the Fuchsia trilogy. But this is the stories with Santa Muerte, and the activity in that, but from the protagonist that doesn't get named at any point, is just that's based on me when I dream and dealing with like in the first story where it's almost like a flashback, but the protagonist has gone there while he's asleep in dreaming, and he goes back to the moment where, this isn't really a spoiler because it's at the beginning of the first story, but when Fuchsia is being murdered. So like he gets to go back and see that in like a sort of cinematic way, but he's in the scene. He can see them, but they can't see him. So he's almost like the cameraman in a movie, that kind of idea. Some of my dreams are a bit like that, where you're kind of watching a scene play out, but no one in the scene can see you, but you can see them, and you kind of get like a bit like playing a video game again, I guess. You're seeing these things sort of play out, and then you've there's one particular dream I had that the activity in those stories was based on, which is it was unusual at the time because I didn't really know any of the cultural connections or whatever, but when I was asleep, I was in sort of a dark void, and then there was smoke that plumed towards me from the void, and then it sort of shifted into a word, like the smoke spelled out a word, and it was Tlaloc, which is Tlaloc. Now, at the time, I didn't have a clue what that was, but later on, when I woke up from the dream, I wrote it down, and it turns out there's an Aztec god called Tlaloc, which is like a weather god, like the rain god in the Aztec culture. And I thought, oh, that was unusual. But the writing then shifted into the shape of like a cartoon of a dog's head, and I didn't know what that meant. And then the void dissipated, and I was on a shoreline of a lake, and there were 3 men who were wearing like wide brim hats, like the Old West. And to the front left of me looked like a Native American man, standing next to an old wooden fishing hut. Bear in mind, I'm British. I'm from Liverpool, so I've never been to America, by the way. So I'm looking at the scene thinking, this is a weird dream. And they were all paused. It was as if someone had paused a movie, but it was all there, 3D, and I'm in the scene. And then all of a sudden it unpaused, and the men standing to my right started shooting pistols and revolvers towards me, because I was kind of between them and a Native American guy. So then I was like, I ran backwards, and there was a small jetty leading out onto the lake, like a pier. I don't know if you call them jetties in the US, but a small wooden pier, and there was a crate on it. So I ran and huddled behind that, and then I realized they're not shooting at me, they can't even see me. And then I looked to the Native American guy, and he, he fell down in a pool of his own blood. And then the scene kind of went dark as if evening went to night. And then I heard more movement beside the fishing hut, and something started moving towards where I was. But then the gunman shot again, and I didn't get to see what it was, but whatever it was, it keeled over. And then the scene paused, and everything went to nighttime. And then a dog started walking out of the shadows towards me, which is, the dream started in the void with a little cartoon head of a dog. And this dog walked over to me, and it had in its mouth a wallet. And it was carrying a wallet in its mouth. And I took the wallet and opened it, and there was a hand drawing, like a pencil sketch of the dog. And on the other side, there was handwriting, and I couldn't make out what it said. It was in the English alphabet, but it was a language I didn't understand. I've since found out that what I remember of it looks a lot like the way Navajo is written, because it has all them grave markings and the accent marks to let you know how to pronounce the word. So they use the English alphabet, but it's modified. And then I thought, okay, I don't know what to do. So I handed the wallet back to the dog, and it took the wallet back in its mouth. And then there was a little wooden boat in the water next to the jetty now, where the crate had been. So then the dog stepped onto the boat, and then I thought, all right, I followed it. It sat at the front of the boat looking out to the lake, and I picked up the paddle. I was standing on the boat in the middle of it. It's only a small little wooden rowboat, and I just started paddling out like the ferryman, the Psychopomp Charon from Greek myth. And as we paddled out, it went darker and darker, and then I felt the dog was gone. It disappeared in front of me, and then the boat sank beneath my feet, and I felt water about a couple inches up my feet, and then I was back in that void from the beginning. And another plume of smoke came, and the Native American guy who I'd seen get shot, he kind of emerged from the smoke in front of me, and he held out like a small packet like that, looked like a carton. And at the top, it looked like tobacco, raw tobacco. It looked like that, and like pluming from the top. And as I reached and grabbed a tuft of it, he smiled, and then the dream dissipated, and I was already eyes wide open in bed, staring at the ceiling. And I thought, that's so weird. There was no transition between being asleep in the dream and being awake. My eyes were already completely open.
Interesting.
That's the strangest. So it's such a realistic dream, the way how lucid it was, and then I thought I have to write that down. So I wrote it all down at one point. I never put it in the book, but I used that, like all the activity in that, to. You can probably tell based on having read the three stories with Fuchsia, the void, the water up to the ankles, all that stuff comes from that dream, because it was. I thought this is like a cool concept that can just string through each of the stories.
Yeah. Well, very good. I can get a feeling then, I guess, through all the things you've shared about different of the stories, how you take your dreams but what you add to them from your own imagination or your own experiences is I don't know how you'd say the dreams are kind of I'd say your work is the backbone of it, and the dreams are the filler, or the structure of storyline, perhaps.
The ingredients, The dreams are a bit like they gave me everything that I need, and I've just got to kind of organize it a little bit and make sense of it. And then when there's parts where there's always gaps in your memory, even if you're awake, there's gaps in memory. So I kind of get to. That's where I get to be imaginative and create little, take creative liberties to sort of weave a story through whatever it was I was dreaming about, and then I can, like Remnant to Mother's Love. It's one of the reasons it's my favorite, is because it's very accurate to the original dream, but then I got to bookend either end of it, and then based on the bookends, I got to trace the poetic story of the mother and the child with what was already there. So it kind of
Right.
ties it all together, and it helps reconcile it in your mind, because when you have a dream where it's only that middle section, there's a lot left
That's
unanswered.
true. Very true. Yeah, very true. Uh, so I was wondering, do any of your dreams or the stories reflect your own view of the afterlife? How do you think
uh,
they play together, or do you think it's all the stories or the dreams are all more imaginary, or is there some aspect to it? How does it compare to what you feel the afterlife is like?
I think it's like I've started thinking about how that might be a dreaming, might be almost like a training ground, in a similar way to how I mentioned video games introducing new concepts that are dangerous for you to try in real life when you're awake. If you try to fly in real life, you're probably going to end up killing yourself.
Yeah.
But if you do it in a dream, or if you do it in a video game, you're perfectly safe, because it's a video game character. And then when you take that into your dream, you're still perfectly safe, because but the thing that the video game does for you is it's almost like training wheels, because it trains you mentally to recognize that activity as a safe thing.
Hmm.
So even though hopefully you're not going to try and fly when you're awake and end up hurting yourself, what instead might happen is you start to feel comfortable with the motion of that, to the point where when you're dreaming, it becomes sort of second nature. So then in a dream, you might be able to fly. It's
Hmm.
almost like I see dreaming as like an extension of that. The next step of that is almost like you're training yourself to be a bit more comfortable with new concepts. These, like like flying, or the psychopomp work I was just talking about, these are things that you can't really do in the physical world. But then when you're in a video game, and then you take it to a dream and you get better at it in a dream, I think maybe afterlife, when you die, everything you've trained yourself mentally is, because you're leaving the physical behind. The physical stuff is still here, which is great. But then when you leave here, I imagine, I don't know for sure, but I imagine what you've learned mentally or emotionally, anything that's non-physical, you can probably take with you. So it's almost like a training ground. So I don't know what the afterlife would be, but I imagine all of that, everything you learn that you get to keep, that isn't physical, probably goes with you, and it's useful. I would hope.
Yeah, I think it does, at least from my experience with ancestors. Definitely, it's as the ones that do not go immediately to the oneness. Most everybody seems to stay in the afterlife or in the realm around us until they're ready to move on from there. Um, that those people all, and well, the ones that do go directly to the oneness also, I think they seem to all have their memory banks intact, like their experiences and things. And for sure it's in your biofields, right, in your auras or your biofields, because we're all energy, and all those experiences, the emotions that we feel during our experiences are embedded in the light waves around us that makes up our biofield. And they have that too. I mean, that's my experience, that they're the biofield. They just don't have the solid in the middle of it,
Yeah,
right?
it's memory as well.
Yeah, it
Like we were
is.
saying before about being able to revisit a memory. So even if an ancestor, or one, like a grandparent, if you knew your grandparents while they were alive in your lifetime, I think even after they die, if they don't, if there isn't a literal um, visitation from them in a dream, I think your memory is so powerful that you can reconstruct it. You can reconstruct them as almost like a character in your dream that you can learn from, because they were a particular archetype in your life. So it's almost like a psychological study of yourself, but you're using In my case, like a grandparent, like my granddad or my grandma, visiting me in a dream could be me reconstructing them using my memory to sort of try and teach myself, like my subconscious trying to speak to my conscious self and teach me a lesson. Like I mentioned, my cousin before, he's a younger cousin than me, but his particular dry brand of humor, I think, is the archetype that my subconscious wanted to try and deliver to me, and it was making it obvious by showing me my cousin who's got that kind of humor, so I would recognize immediately, oh, he's joking, he's being funny. Whereas if it was someone else, I might not have picked up on that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Definitely. I know my experience with ancestors had started with my maternal grandfather, my mom's father, and it could be very likely that if it was someone else, I wouldn't have even wanted to touch or had been too afraid or something to go into working with ancestors. But because of his humor and as well as sincerity and having known him very well in my life, it was something I could accept and start from, work from. So
Familiarity as well. When you're familiar
yes.
with something, you're not as afraid of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you met any, except for the one you talked to, have you met other ancestors in your dreams? Well, that wasn't an ancestor. That would have been
My cousin's still
a
alive, don't worry.
living cousin. Yeah, but have you met any of your ancestors in your dreams?
The grandparents that I've known in my lifetime, who all my grandparents are dead now. So the weird thing is, so my nan and my granddad on my mum's side, they were divorced long before I was born. So I had about I had three granddads when I was born because my nan had already remarried. So I just had my mum's stepdad was my granddad, and my mum's dad was my granddad, and then on my dad's side I had my granddad. So
Sure.
I had three granddads for the most part growing up, and then on my dad's side, my granddad died, and my grandma got a new boyfriend who was a lot like a granddad to me. So I had four granddads.
Okay. Yeah.
Who they've all since passed, but I've seen. I never got to see my maternal nan and grandfather in the same room together because they were already divorced. I'd never. It's just they were fine. They're good people. They were friendly, but they just didn't know each other anymore. That's all. So I'd never seen them in the same room together before. The whole time that they were both alive, and then after they both passed, because my granddad passed funnily enough, on my birthday in 2015. And the funny thing about that is his dad, my great grandfather, was born. We have the same birthday, July 6th.
Oh,
so
wow.
My great grandfather was born July 6th, and I think it was, I hope I'm right in saying it was 1904. My great grandfather was born July 6th, and then I was born July 6th, 1992. And then my granddad on my mum's side, my great grandfather's son, he died on July 6th in 2015. And then a couple years later, my nan died. And they hadn't seen each other in my lifetime, but I had a dream one time where I was not lucid, but I was sat at a table in a very passive mode, and to my right was an old lady with like really white hair, which for context, on my mum's side of the family, the women all get white hair. They don't go grey, they go white.
Okay.
The same thing's happening with my hair, funnily enough. So in the dream, this lady, I didn't recognize her, but the next lady to her was my nan, and then the next person to my nan was my granddad.
Okay.
So I'd seen them. We were sat at a table together, and it was the first time I'd ever seen my nan and granddad together, ever. It was in a dream, and something about that caused me to become lucid. I realized because I recognized them. I was in a passive state at first, but then I had that moment where I'm like, oh, I'm dreaming. And then I was lucid, and then I was like, that's my nan and granddad. And then the lady next to me, who I didn't recognize, I was looking at her, and she looked at me, and she said something like, "Oh, he's aware." Like, oh, he's aware, like almost like I wasn't supposed to become lucid because they were talking,
Right.
and I was just there being passively quiet, just dreaming, but not really lucid. And then I became lucid, and she goes, "Oh, he's aware." And then a few moments later, I woke up, and then when I told my mum about that dream, because I described a lady who was sat next to me who I didn't know, she went into her old family history and found a photograph, and she was like, "Is this the lady?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it was my great grandmother, so my nan's nan on my mum's side,
Uh-huh.
uh, who I'd never met her. She had died way before I was born. So I was sat next to my great grandmother and her daughter, my nan, and my granddad in this dream, but I'd never seen my great grandmother before. Like I said, I didn't even recognize her in the dream. She was just a lady who was sat next to me.
Yeah.
And that was very odd.
That's a beautiful story, though, of your dream. Do you think they had a message for you?
It felt more like they were having a meeting over me. like I was present and I was sat at the table, but it was like not in a mean spirited way, but shush, the grown ups are talking. That kind
Yeah.
of situation, like they were having a little conference of their own, and then
Right.
suddenly I became aware I became lucid, and I was looking at them like, oh my god, that's my grandparents. And then the lady next to me, who turned out to be my great grandmother, she just went, "Oh, he's aware." Like it was like a comical thing. Like I wasn't
Right.
supposed to become lucid, and then, but to them it was just like it was fine. It was just they were like, "It'd be better if you stay quiet."
Right. Right. Uh, um, oh, I lost my question for you. Um, you're July 6th. You had so
Yeah.
many connections of births and deaths in your family on July 6th, including you. Have you looked into numerology on that or other things? I would think there has to be something that ties in with all those together.
I've never looked too deep into numerology because partly because I'm terrible with numbers.
Oh,
I teach myself lots of different languages, but maths isn't one of them. I can do it, but um, I'm very picky because of if I'm interested in something, then I'll hyper focus on it and I'll go deep into it. But maths, for some reason, from a very young age, never interested me.
right. It's not your
So
thing.
then
Hmm.
numerology, there's also lots of different schools of it.
There is. Yeah, there
There's
is.
like the Hebrew numerology is the one that's usually looked at. But with regards to July 6th, it's going to frighten a few people who are like that. But the only one that came up to me that jumped out immediately was 666, because there's my great granddad, there's my granddad, and there's me. And it's all July 6th.
Right.
So there's a 6 and a 6 and a 6 through
Okay.
about 100 years gap, a little over 100 years, actually about
100
110
years.
years of
That
like
we're all.
between my great grandfather and my grandfather dying.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I know things get a bit convoluted, especially with 666.
Well, I wonder if it has something to do though with your natal chart and how it's arranged. I don't know. I don't know numerology very well, but say like for me, um, I separated the from my first husband on March 17th. I separated from my second husband on March 17th. And my grandfather appeared to me in my kitchen here as an ancestor on March 17th. And it's like, well, there has to be something with men and March 17th, or the energies perhaps of the equinox that are going
I was
on then,
thinking that, yeah.
or the shift from it'd be the shift from Pisces to Aries. So I don't know, but I would just assume with that many, there would likely be some connection for you if you ever
I think it's
chose to look into it.
usually liminal times of year, like spring and autumn. Like you mentioned, the March 17th is pretty much, depending on where you are, around about the spring equinox, isn't it? And
Right.
then
Mhm.
in obviously my part of the world, the autumn, Halloween, or in Ireland it was Samhain. Everyone says Samhain because
Right.
of how it's spelled,
Champagne.
but
Yeah.
it's
Uh-huh.
in Irish it's the MH is pronounced like the letter W. It's just how the Catholics wrote down the Irish language.
Okay.
So
How's Samhain pronounced in Irish?
Samhain. The
Samhain.
MH in the middle is
Just
like a W. So the
yeah.
Sam, people split it as like Sam Hain, but
Okay.
the MH in the middle is just W basically. Um, it's pronounced like the letter W. So that's Samhain, and
So
it literally means summer's end. It means the end of summer.
okay.
That's just what it translates to in from Irish to English.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's a cool little pivot between summer and winter. It is that middle point, isn't it? Because it's in the I don't know if you know too much about the Celtic origins, but it's the thinning of the veil, the idea of the other world becoming the veil between this world and the other world is at its thinnest. So that's when it's best time to communicate with the ancestors. That's what
Mhm.
the ancient tradition is in my
Right.
part of the world.
For Halloween, it kind of.
Yeah,
Uh, I know people that would be referred to or call themselves witches or whatever, in that line of thought. The Samhain or the Samhain is
yeah,
very important to them. I know.
yeah. It's I think it's because it's that anything liminal. Like when you look into Celtic tradition, it's very a lot of other traditions are very sun centered. It's very like at the peak of the sun in the summer. But the Celtic tradition is a little bit odd because it's a little bit of both. There's that weird liminal part, is where if you trace all the different archetypes, they're always liminal figures. If you look at what people call Celtic gods, they were never referred to as gods historically. That's like a modern um, overlay to try and
Okay.
help people understand what they are. But like these figures that are in Celtic tradition as gods are usually liminal figures. So you get like men, like Lu. There's a god called Lu, who's a sun god, but he's also like the god of poetry and creativity and art and all these sort of feminine archetype things.
Hmm.
But then he's also got some masculine archetype things. So usually in like continental Europe traditions, you get very like strict archetypes. Like Thor is very masculine.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
Freya is very feminine. There's usually quite strict boundaries on them, which is quite easy to learn. But then Celtic tradition is a little bit difficult because it's like a different mode of thought where everything's just a little bit in between, a little bit androgynous kind of, and it's very unusual. But it's come through the lens of Christianity and the rewritings that took place. But the remnants that we do have, it's very odd. It's like very centered on the spring equinox and the autumn equinox,
Hmm.
as opposed to like summer and winter, like the height of the sun and the lowest point of the sun. It's kind of the between stages. It's a very
Right.
unusual sort of practice, a bit like relating to dreaming and the afterlife or that between stage psychopomp. It's all very mixed in with it. Um, so I think probably I'm in the right place geographically.
Right. Right. It sounds like it. Combining that line of thought with your dreaming, like you said, the lucid dreaming being in that liminal state. Interesting. Yeah. That's very interesting. Huh. So where would you like to go in your writing next? You say you're working on a new book.
I am. Yeah, there's a couple. There's one I mentioned before, which is the cyberpunk type novel. I'm slowly chipping away at that because it's a bit complex because of the sci-fi nature of it. There's technologies that I'm inventing words for, but I'm sort of recycling real world vocabulary to construct make believe technologies, I guess, that kind of make sense in the realm of the mind. It can be a bit complex, but the one that you mentioned in the bio, the fantasy fiction one, that one's coming along a lot better because that one is based on a dream that I had in. I started writing both of the novels the same week in 2022 because one of them, the sci-fi one, is just completely made up, make believe. It's not based on a dream, but the fantasy fiction one is based on a dream that I had that it's set over 3 days and 3 nights, but the 3 night time segments in the story are uplifted from my dream that I had, because I wrote down a dream at the time because I thought it was cool. So I wrote it down, and then I'm slowly chipping away at it because the nighttime sections, I know what's going to happen because I dreamt it, but the daytime sections, I'm using that and basically constructing it completely, creating it and creating these different characters, like a group of characters that are traveling from one end of a valley to another end of the valley. But it's not so simple as just walking across it. It gets a bit difficult at night times for them. I won't give more away, but there's a reason.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
It's also heavily influenced by like Celtic tradition and a little bit of Norse tradition. And I've been looking at also classical, like the Roman. It's basically an ode to Britain in a way. It's kind of, this is my home, but it's like there's a little bit of Welsh influence, Irish, Scottish, and then there's the Norse, and then there's a little bit of Roman in there as well, just to create these different factions so that I could justify having the characters that I've imagined to kind of, in fact, the one of the main characters in the story is a lot like Lou from A Mother's Love. So A Mother's Love is a little bit like a precursor to it in a way. They're not set in the same world, but it's that kind of theme where it's sort of medieval fantasy with a bit of elves and magic and that kind of idea, just to sort of bring to life the Celtic heritage in a way.
I would think you'd have a large reader base for that.
Hopefully.
I was thinking maybe, I hope so too. I'll read it. What I was wondering is if you could intentionally or hold the intention for seeding a dream that would help you fill in parts of the daytime of the one book that is 3 days and 3 nights or something.
The odd thing does happen that way. I've not seeded dreams, but sometimes, because it's since 2022 is when I started writing it, and I'm just chipping away at it. I've had the odd dream where I'm like, that might work. Like that might just, like the Irish goddess, let's say, Morrigan, is they usually see her connected to ravens and crows, overseeing the battlefield, that kind of idea. So I've leveraged a little bit from that, and then some of that started to appear in dreams.
Okay.
Like that kind of idea. It's almost like, so I kind of seeded it, but in a very passive sort of way. I didn't go to sleep thinking planting the seed for that. It's almost like passively over time, because I was exploring that in real life. It started to seep into my dreaming, and then that starts to feed back into the story that I'm writing.
Right.
It's like a feedback loop.
Yeah. Oh, very good. I just had one more thought on time travel, because I know in some of my dreams I've traveled. I really felt like I was traveling. How closely do you think that traveling in the dreams and I don't know, of our past lives, that thinning of the veil, how much do you feel is like really related. This isn't, or that are reflections of the two, is that a real thing, do you think, or do you think it's just totally dreamland that
Um, I think in the same way as what we were talking before about memory, it's almost like it could. I might be wrong, but it could be a reconstruction. Like the dream I told you about the Native American guy. That seemed like it was set in the past, but like I say, I've never been to America. It seemed just like a psychopomp story where it was like I was the psychopomp who needed to go, and it was almost like I was being given a quest, like just go. There's a dog whose spirit is still stuck at this
right,
location where something awful happened, and then we need you to bring the dog back. This is filling in the gaps because nobody spoke in the dream. I didn't speak. It was just all silent and intuitive. And then the dog disappeared in front of me on the boat. And then the next thing is the void. And the Native American guy handed me tobacco. And again, at the time, I didn't know what that meant, so I had to Google it when I woke up. And apparently, it is a real Native American tradition in various tribes, including the Navajo. A gift of tobacco is like almost like a sign of friendship, like a peace offering, that kind of idea. At the time when I dreamt it, I didn't know any of this stuff. The same with the Aztec god Tlaloc. I didn't know why that was presented at the beginning, but it all seemed like almost like a reconstruction, like in the story Fuchsia. I mentioned the death scene, the murder scene in the story that I wrote it's almost like I got that idea from that dream, the idea of being able to almost go back in time and see a reconstruction. A bit like when you see them in true crime documentaries and you see a reconstruction, only instead it's interactive and you kind of get to fix things. Maybe there were loose ends, like in my case, this dog that clearly needed to get back to its owner. And you kind of, no one tells you like, oh, here's your mission. It's just kind of, you've got to intuit your way through this. And I might be completely wrong. It might have just been just a dream, just a psychological dream, fixing something within my own subconscious, maybe. But there's also, I suppose, even in Jungian psychology, they have the collective unconscious, which I suppose is, if the memory is there, then it can reconstruct, and you can, in my case, interact with that memory in a way and sort of piece things together. But I don't know how I'd go about proving where that took place with the Native American guy and his dog, and if it really did take place. I wouldn't know how to figure that out. But I think there has to be something to it because it was so unusual, and for the word Tlaloc to be a real word in another culture on the other side of the world and another continent, and it's a culture that kind of doesn't exist anymore because of colonization. So it's not like at the forefront of pop culture or anything, is it? So
or like seeing your great grandmother and you hadn't ever seen her in person, but your mom had a picture of her and that was her.
I'd never even seen a photograph of her until I had that dream, because that was the first time my mum had thought to show me the photograph, because she was like, wait, is it this lady? And I'm like, yeah, that's her. And she's like, that's my grandmother. It's like, so there must be something to it, but I don't know as well. Like, if you think about epigenetic memory, you know, the way you have genetic inheritance, which is your physical, like I look a bit like my mum. So it's physical inheritance, but epigenetic, epi is just the outermost inheritance, like external to your physical genetics. So for some reason, all life inherits different traits, I guess. You know, like the way certain animals know how to hunt instinctively from a very young age. They don't get taught; they just know. It's like there's a non-physical inheritance.
Well, I think it's physiological in a way. At least, you know, with biofield tuning that I do, it's physiological. I mean, we're working in light particles on light waves, right? And things, so you can't see them at all. So in some ways it's metaphysical, and in some ways it's very, very spiritual, because we're all made of the universal spirit or God, and it's all, but yet there's a physical, tangible thing. I mean, you're talking about little particles that they can actually see under powerful microscopes, things like that. So it's like, um, something's real. I know I've had um, a lot of experiences in hypnosis, trying to connect with, getting a message from ancestors, or trying to connect stories or connect people or reasons, things in my mind wanting to connect, and these ancestors will pop up, and it's like definitely not anyone I would have intentionally created. It's, and they're there, right? They're
Yeah,
in
I think
my
that
bio,
might be the
my biofield.
inheritance. I think
Yes,
it's
I
like
think
that
so.
epigenetic inheritance of like the I don't know if you might have seen in, I suppose, Eastern tradition might be the most famous, the Kundalini idea of the coiled serpent at the base of the spine rising up to your crown.
Yeah.
Is like a modern way of explaining that might be coming online. You're online, that kind of idea. Like there's your epigenetic inheritance. Maybe you're getting access to what Jung might call the collective unconscious, or whatever. So there's a collective thing, but some of that collective is your own inheritance from ancestors who perhaps you didn't even know, but it's encoded in your DNA because your DNA holds memory, and some of that memory isn't even active. Like even modern science has studied this and shows that like a lot of your DNA structure you're not even using. They call it junk DNA in science because they haven't figured out what it's for. But like I don't think for a second it's junk.
Right,
I
right.
think that like you can, there's probably, even if it's evolutionary, where over time it's slowly coming online. Because can you imagine if it all came online at once, how much people would freak out? I mean, people chase that experience as well with like ayahuasca, using
Yes. Yeah.
like real, and that's the way I see that is a bit like a consciousness as an aperture, like an aperture on a camera where it like opens and
Okay.
closes and it lets more light in or out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see consciousness as a little bit like that. So it's it's things like ayahuasca I see as like someone just prying open their aperture and seeing lots and getting lots of answers out of it, which fine, each to their own.
Sure. Sure.
If you feel you're comfortable doing that, then I guess you are. And but like I think sometimes there's an art to just allowing the aperture to slowly expand through comfort, so that it's like you, the more comfortable you are, the more you see, or the more saturation colors will have, or you can tune into finer sounds. And if you're listening to a song, you can passively listen to it and not really pick up a lot from it. But then the thousandth time that you listen to it and you've relaxed and you're really paying attention to what the bass line is doing,
Yeah.
suddenly the only thing you can hear is the bass line. And there's
Right.
like, you can do that out in nature as well. If you close your eyes and then start to listen to, if you try to filter out the sound of like cars or the train or whatever it is, you can start to hear birds in the distance whistling, like really far off, because you can really tune in. And I see that as like almost like you're training that conscious aperture to like, like open and close a bit. Like sometimes you see phone cameras do it where it starts to shift focus, and then eventually it focuses in, and you get that clear picture. There's a little bit of that going on, I think, as well, and sometimes that bleeds into dreaming. So you
Yeah.
can kind of do that in dreams if you lucid dream. I suppose for the people listening, if anyone's interested in a lucid dream, and one thing I've found useful is when I'm in a dream, if I feel myself sort of pulling out of it, like I'm going to wake up again, I'll focus on something in my environment. And if there's nothing particular to focus on, I'll look at my hands and I do like a pattern with my thumb against my fingers, like a particular pattern inside the dream, because then I'm pulling my attention into the dream to my dream hands, which means my attention isn't being pulled back out to my body, it's being pulled into the dream. So it's kind of just like it's that old saying, I suppose, the where attention goes and where attention goes, energy flows. It's that kind of idea. It's just like, but in less of a woo-woo magic-y way. It's more like if you're paying attention to what's happening, something that's happening within the dream, and you're focusing on it, then your attention can't be pulled back out to your body, and you're not going to wake up. And you can do that continuously throughout the dream or intermittently to try and, if you feel yourself pulling out of the dream and you want to stay in, you can focus on something in your environment, or do what I do and like tap my thumb to each of my fingers on my hand just to like draw my attention back in, regain focus, and then carry on. Hopefully it works.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for that tip. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Is there any last thought you'd like to leave with people, or maybe you could show your picture of your book there that you have? And
I do. I have the book here. Hopefully it shows on camera. I'll see if I can. It's a glossy cover, so it's going to reflect the light. But that drawing in the middle is that's a Celtic raven that I hand drew. That the Celtic knotwork. I copied I have a silver ring, with a Celtic knot raven on, like, engraved on it, and I hand drew that and then colored it, and then I cut it out as like a stencil, and the tartan in the background is just a scarf I have, a Scottish tartan scarf that I put the picture on it and photographed it, and thought that'll be a good enough cover. And the back cover that's just a photograph of a pond in my back garden. It's the reflection of a tree. We have a tree out there just above the pond, and it was winter. In fact, it was probably around about this time last year. But I thought it looked nice because the reflection was indigo because of the way the sky was. And I took a picture of it, and then I thought, that'll be a nice back cover as well.
Yeah, it was nice. Yeah, very good. So again, anyone, Mark's book, both the US and the UK Amazon links are down below, and I found it a very good read. And Mark, I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for insights onto how you dream and how you build stories around it. And very
hopefully
cool.
It helps people as well, because there's a lot of creative people out there that maybe overlook the part where if you dream of something and take a quick note of it when you wake up, you can. I never thought I'd be a published author, because I struggled reading when I was growing up until I was in about my mid-20s. I decided to teach myself to read and to write and edit. And then last year I was like, I think I'm probably good enough to self-publish. And obviously self-publishing has come around now. So you can, and it's free. You can do it for free. And just one more note before we go, for if anyone watching does want to buy the book from Amazon, don't feel bad about what version you buy, whether it's the digital, the paperback, or the hardback, whichever one you can afford. I get roughly the same royalty. So it's like, and I've priced them this is in the British pound, but in British pound I put the digital was £3, the paperback is £10, and the hardback is £15. And presumably there's a delivery fee wherever you are in the world, but apart from the digital, of course, but it doesn't matter which one you buy. I get basically within about £1 of the same royalty at the other end of it. So I think the digital is actually the one that I make the middle. So it's the cheapest, but I make the middle percentage. The hardback I obviously make the most from, and the paperback I think I make the least. So it's very minimal difference. So don't feel like you need to buy the most expensive, or it's whatever. I know hard to tough at the minute with the cost of living, so just whatever you can spare.
Right. Oh, very good. Okay. Well, I guess that's a great way to end then. And thank you, Mark. I really appreciate you being here and meeting you in person after we've communicated for several years. So Yeah.
Oh, thanks very much. It was fun.
Good, good. I enjoyed it too, and I look forward to reading your next book.
I'll
So
let you know when it's done.
I would like that. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And thanks everybody for watching. Well, catch you next time. Bye-bye.